Everyone dies at some point. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have one last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last photograph. On Friday night, we met up at Casey's house. Even though she has an annoying neighbor, her parents built this amazing fire pit that's the perfect spot for chilly autumn nights. After starting the fire and roasting some marshmallows, she brought out something I hadn't seen in at least a decade, a disposable camera. "This is a special camera," Casey said with a grin. "Apparently, when you take a picture, it'll be your last photo before you die." I sat there, trying to digest what she was saying. "You mean the camera kills you?" "Yeah, like that one Goosebumps book," Brady replied. "Say cheese and die. Oh my gosh, I love that one," Maribel said, grinning. No, that's not what I mean." Casey held her hands up, clearly annoyed that we didn't get it. "Everyone has a last photo before they die. Like, for example, my grandpa. 3 days before he passed away, he went on a fishing trip. The last photo on that trip is the last photo that was ever taken of him." "Well, it's impossible for a camera to show that," I replied. "It would have to be a time-traveling camera for that to work." "You guys are no fun." Casey rolled her eyes and started putting the camera back in her bag. Wait. We didn't say we didn't want to use it," Maribel said. "Yeah, it could be fun," I added. A wicked smile flashed on Casey's lips. "Okay, good. Who wants to be the first?" Brady raised his hand. "I'll go." That was Brady's for you. I never missed a chance to impress the girls. He stood up, his face lit by the roaring fire. "Where should I stand?" "The lighting's kind of harsh. Maybe by that tree." Brady walked several feet away from the fire and stood next to the tree. Then he leaned against it, crossed his arms, and raised an eyebrow. Casey raised the camera to her face. 3, 2, 1. Cheese, click. A white light flashed across the dark backyard. Brady stepped away from the tree, grinning. "Okay, who's next?" Casey asked. "I'll go," Maribel said. She pushed her glasses up her nose and stood next to the tree, somewhat awkwardly. Casey lifted the camera to her face again and took a photo. Click. The ratcheting sound of her rewinding the film filled the air. "Okay, Benny, your turn," she said, shooting me a smile. I walked over to the tree, took off my baseball cap, and waited. Casey lifted the camera to her face, then frowned. "Can't you smile?" "Nope." "Ugh. Fine." Click. She rewound the film and handed the camera to me. Then she posed next to the tree in a classic sorority squat pose. Yeah, this wasn't awkward at all. Casey and I had just started dating. But the longer things went on, the more doubts I had. Sure, we looked good in pictures, a classic football star cheerleader match. In reality, we weren't either of those things. She was pretty but extremely insecure, jealous, and high maintenance. I was a neurodivergent math nerd who just happened to luck out genetically and look like a jock. I stared at her through the viewfinder, her form slightly distorted. Click. "Hey, you didn't count down," she whined. "What? You were posing." "I want to know exactly when the photo is being taken." "That's all." "Okay." "Sure." I rewound the camera and handed it back to her. She sidled up next to me and lowered her voice. "Hey, when Brady and Maribel leave, do you want to stay a little bit after?" "Oh, I don't know. My dad's renovating the kitchen, and he wants me to help him in the morning. It doesn't have to be long, just for a little while." I should have said no, but she was pushing, and I felt bad saying no. "Okay, just for a half hour." "Sounds good to me. We can watch something down in the basement. My parents can't hear a thing down there." "What about your neighbor? He seemed really mad when we were watching V for Vendetta. He said the explosions woke him up. Remember, he was pounding on the glass door and yelling at us?" She rolled her eyes. "So we'll keep the volume down. Come on, it's just a half hour. We don't even have to watch anything. Okay?" Before I could say more, Casey grabbed the camera and started towards the fire pit. I followed. "When are you going to get those developed?" Brady asked. "We could go tonight. There's still a 1-hour photo in the CVS on Route 14, Maribel replied. "And we could pick up some snacks." "Wait, seriously? They still develop photos?" Casey asked. My dad uses them for, like, passport photos and other official stuff." So it was decided. The 4 of us piled into Brady's car and took off into the night. Asterisk, 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 we spent the entire hour hanging out at the store, picking out snacks. Then Casey went up to the counter, grabbed the paper envelope, and led us back out to the car. We piled inside, and Brady turned on the lights. She flicked open the envelope and pulled out the photos. No fucking way. The first photo showed an older man standing on a beach. Grey hair was dripping wet, and blue waves were rolling behind him. But with his square jaw and tall build, he looked just like an older Brady. That's impossible, I said. Not necessarily, Maribel replied after a pause. The camera looked like a disposable camera, but it's possible someone put a cheap microchip in there, like a mini Raspberry Pi or something. Then it took our photos, and with the help of AI, it aged them up. Yeah, but how would the CVS develop them? I asked. Maybe it was straightforward. Maybe when he opened the camera to get the film, there was a USB stick there instead, loaded up with the images, so he just stuck them on the computer and printed them out. It's weird, but Amazon is full of weird stuff like this. Where'd you get this camera again? Maribel asked. A friend gave it to me. And with that vague response, she flipped to the next photo. It was a family Christmas photo. Several people are standing in front of the tree, their happy faces lit by multicolored lights. But my heart dropped when I saw the woman on the left. A woman, maybe 30, holding a little baby. She has the same heart-shaped face and the same curly, dark hair as Maribel. Oh no, she said, her eyes wide. We all stared at the photo silently, unsure what to say. But then I saw it. In the middle of the photo, sitting on the couch, was an old woman. A very old woman, with skin so wrinkled it looked like crepe paper and hair so white it looked like a tuft of cotton candy on her head. Wire-framed glasses were perched on her nose. I think that's you. Maribel snatched the photo out of Casey's hands. Whoa, she whispered, studying it up close. For all her big talk about this being some AI thing, she seemed to take it pretty seriously. As I watched Maribel, I couldn't help but smile. For a second, I felt something a sense of awe as I looked at her face, lighting up with the joy of her family. I'd never looked at Maribel as anything other than a friend, but there was something tugging at my heartstrings now. Not even something I could put into words as a crush, attraction, or lust, just something. A flicker of connection, of emotion, of Benny. I glanced at Casey, and then I looked down. In her hands was the photo she'd taken of me. The exact same photo. Of me tonight, holding my baseball cap, standing next to the tree. Not smiling. Staring straight ahead, eyes red from the flash. My first thought was that the camera had malfunctioned. Whatever this was, AI or otherwise, had messed up and glitched on my picture. And it just spit out the photo as it was taken tonight. But as Casey, Brady, and Maribel stared at me with horror, I realized. So it's saying, the picture you took of me tonight is the last picture of me alive. I guess so, Casey said. The silence pressed in. I shook my head and forced a laugh. Come on, this is just some stupid prank camera. Like Maribel said, it's some AI thing. Maybe it even purposely skips some people to scare them. None of them were laughing. Okay, come on, let's look at Casey's. I plucked my photo from the stack and froze. Casey was sitting on the floor of someone's basement. Her hands were tied to a metal support pole with a thick rope. A strip of duct tape had been placed over her mouth. The left side of her head was matted with blood, and a thin trail dripped down the side of her face. Her blue eyes were wide with fear, and she was looking straight at whoever was taking the photo. This is some sick fucking prank, Brady muttered, his voice low with anger. Casey just sat there, frozen. Let's go home, Maribel said. Forget about all this stuff. It's just a prank, like Brady said. But Casey didn't move. She just sat there, the photo shaking in her hands. Her blue eyes were wide with fear. What's wrong? Maribel asked softly. The basement, she said, finally pointing at the photo. I recognize it. My dad and I went over there one time when he needed help with the fuse box, and I thought he was annoying. But I never, Casey. Whose basement is it? I asked. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. My neighbor's. Where are you going? I asked Brady, who was already unbuckling his seatbelt. Obviously, the guy in there did something to the photos. I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Brady started to swing the door open. Wait, Casey shouted. What? What if he's out there? Who? Brady asked. Craig. My neighbor. Why would he be at the CVS? I don't know, but it's only 3 miles from his house, so he could be here. Wait, guys, this doesn't make sense. How would the photo guy know we thought the camera took our last photos before we died? Maribel asked, placing her own photo in the cup holder. Because we were talking about it, I replied. At least Casey and I were. We were trying to be quiet, but it's possible he heard us. A heavy silence fell over us. Okay, let's go, Maribel said, opening her door. The night was unusually dark. The sliver of a moon hung in the black sky, far above the street lamps of the parking lot. We made our way towards the sliding doors, glowing a warm yellow. Brady was probably right. The photo guy certainly had the time we were in the store for a full hour, waiting for the photos to be developed. He could have easily hopped on some AI tool like Midjourney and typed in things like an old man standing on the beach or a Christmas family photo of an old woman. Although it would take some photoshopping skills to get our actual faces in the images, but if he had access to the real photos we took, that was possible. I hadn't recognized him either, but he looked like he was only a few years older than us. It was possible he knew one of us. Maybe he even had some sort of revenge plot. Maybe his brother had a crush on Casey, or maybe Maribel got picked for the trivia team over his little sister. Just because we didn't know him didn't mean he didn't know us. There are 6 degrees of separation. Much less than that, in a small town like ours. We stepped into the CVS. There was an old woman at the cash register, but no one was at the photo booth. Hey, where'd he go? The photo guy? Brady called out to her, somewhat aggressively. He's in the back, I think, she replied, eyeing him warily. We wandered through the aisles. He's hiding, Brady whispered to us. He knows what he did, and he's hiding out. We followed him down the aisle, the fluorescent lights blinking above us. The more empty aisles we passed, the more convinced I became of this theory. He'd messed with the photos and slipped out before we could confront him about it. Except that left all sorts of questions, like, how did he know what Casey's neighbor's basement looked like? Wouldn't an AI tool refuse to generate such a disturbing image of a woman tied up in a basement? We turned the corner, and there he was. The photo guy is restocking in the cold medicine aisle. And then it happened. Brady went batshit on him. Hey, that wasn't fucking funny. What you did to the photos. Photo guy whipped around. His eyes widened, and he held up his hands. Whoa, he said, taking a step back. What are you? Stop, Casey said, stepping in front of Brady. Then she turned to photo guy. Did you do something to the photos? Her tone had an edge to it I'd never heard before. Fear and anger were slicing through her usual bubbly, chatty tone. And then, to my shock, photo guy nodded. All of us froze. For a second, time seemed to stop. Then Brady started up again. You're a sicko. That was a horrible thing to do, photoshopping Casey, making it look like she was tied up in a basement. Wait, what? Photo guy asked, his eyes widening. Oh, don't deny it, Casey spat. Brady's right. What you did was sick. You're a fucking psycho. No, I did not do that. He shook his head wildly. Look, all I was saying is that I messed up your photo job. Okay? Earlier today, I spilled some Coke on the machine, and when your photos came out, they were all warped and weird and stuff. That happens if water gets inside the machine, and I already threw out the negatives, so I couldn't reprint them. That's all. He held up his hands in surrender. So you didn't edit a photo to show Casey, I said, gesturing to her. Tied up in a basement? His expression told me the answer. No. Wait, all the photos were messed up? I asked. Yeah, I think so. We didn't get any photos that were messed up, right? I turned to Casey. She shook her head. Photo guy shrugged. I don't know, guys. I'm just telling you what happened. Was there anything wrong with the camera? Like a Raspberry Pi inside it or anything? Maribel asked. A Raspberry Pi? His face scrunched up as he glanced between us. Like a microchip, a computer, anything. He shook his head. It looked just like a normal disposable camera to me. I haven't seen one of those in years. An awkward silence fell on the 5 of us. Thanks. Sorry for bothering you, Maribel said finally, starting back down the aisle. The three of us followed her towards the front of the store. We got back to the car without saying a word. Brady and Maribel are in the front, and Casey and I are in the back. I stared at the dark parking lot ahead, my heart pounding in my ears. Maribel fidgeted with her photo in the cup holder. Brady dug in his pocket for the keys. Casey kept her back to me, staring out her window. The car rumbled to life underneath us. Where are we going? I asked. My house, Brady replied. My mom won't care. You and Casey can take the spare room, and Maribel can be on the pull-out sofa. I glanced at Casey. She didn't turn around. Fine with me, Maribel replied. Brady started pulling out of the parking space. Wait, Casey said suddenly. The three of us turned to her. We should take a photo of Benny. Then that isn't his last photo alive, and the camera is wrong. Brady let out a laugh. You're saying you actually believe this shit? She scrunched her face at him. Come on, let's just do it, okay? Fine with me, I replied. Casey turned to me, holding her phone up. I stared at the black camera glinting in the light, staring at me. She raised her hand, her finger shaking over the screen. Okay, 3, 2, 1, click. The fake shutter sound filled the car, but as she stared at the phone screen, her eyes widened. Wait, what? She whispered. My heart dropped. The camera app just, quits out. Hang on, she tapped at the screen. Click. Her eyebrows furrowed. It quit out again. Let me try. Maribel pulled out her phone and pointed it at me. Click. Her smile dropped. She glanced at her phone, then back at me. Mine just did the same thing, she said. It just quit out, as soon as I took the picture. That's 'cause both of you have crappy iPhone XS or whatever, Brady said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, one of the sleek, new Motorola phones that folded up. He lifted it and pointed it at me. The bright white of a flash filled the car. As my eyes readjusted to the darkness, I saw Brady's face. His eyes were wide as he stared at the screen. No, that doesn't even make sense, he muttered to himself, tapping at the screen. What? I asked. He slowly turned the phone around so I could see. All the blood drained out of my face. The photo simply showed the empty back seat of the car. Where I should have been sitting, it was just empty. What does that mean? I'm like a ghost. I said it with a forced laugh. But inside, my heart was pounding like a jackrabbit's, thrumming inside my ears. Let's get out of here. Brady threw the car in reverse. He backed out of the parking space and sped towards the exit. We flew down the main road through town, passing the little shops lined up, the tea place and the bagel shop. In the darkness, I felt a hand curl around mine. I tore my eyes away from the window and found Casey staring at me. Her hand was tight around mine, ice cold. Guilt stabbed through me. I slowly pulled my hand away. What? I couldn't break up with her here in the car. Right now. Could I? I shoved my hands in my pockets. Sorry, my hands are really cold. I'll warm them up. No, your hands are cold too. Colder than mine, actually. Maribel turned around. What's up? Casey glared at me. Then she turned to Maribel. Nothing, she muttered. Then she crossed her arms and stared out the window, not even glancing in my direction for the entire rest of the drive. 10 minutes later, we were pulling into Brady's driveway. He shut off the car, and the inside lights came on. I squinted at the sudden brightness. Casey was motionless, like a statue, still sulking and staring out the window. Without a word, she turned it around for all of us to see. It took me a minute to notice the change, because the photo looked the same, an ancient old lady sitting in front of a Christmas tree, surrounded by family. But now, the woman who had been holding the baby was different. In the previous photo, she'd been holding a little girl in an elaborate infant Christmas dress. Now she was holding a little boy, dressed in a teeny little suit. It changed, she whispered. Mine changed too, Brady said. But not by much. It's just me, a little older. Casey scrambled for her photo, and I heard her sigh of relief almost instantly. She held it out to me, shoveling it in my face, before I could even look at mine. We did it, she said, her voice wavering. Look. Her photo no longer showed her tied up in a basement. Instead, it was a woman with wild grey hair in her 60s, posing next to a shaggy black dog. Relief flooded me, but that relief evaporated as soon as I looked at my photo again. It wasn't the same photo of me posing against the tree. It was a different photo, a wedding photo. I was dressed in a tux, beaming with joy, grinning ear to ear. My hair slicked back, and my bow tie was crisp black against my neck, hand in hand with a beautiful bride. A bride I recognized. It was Maribel. I tried to hide it, but it was too late. Casey's eyes widened. Brady and Maribel leaned into the backseat, curious. Maribel's mouth fell open. Brady stared in shock. A photo swam before met was Maribel. Andy felt weak as darkness crept into the edges of my vision, to the edges of my vision, to the edges of my vision.